Hi, I'm Max Marshall. I'm a former racing driver and I run MMR Performance. I enjoy what I do because I've always been involved with vehicles, different things with engines, whether it be go-kart, motorbike, car. So it's just that same kind of adrenaline that I guess you get from the racing. It's just the adrenaline of getting things finished in time. This is the workshop that we do all our work in, the MMR Performance HQ. We've actually just got a brand new suspension kit in for this customer's B7 RS4. They have a lot of problems with the DRC playing up on them and the suspension gets quite clunky and noisy. So we'll be fitting that over the next couple of days and a load of other little things. So this is my father's 1957 Austin Healey 106. He imported it from California about 6 or 7 years ago. It hadn't run since 1974 and the only reason it kind of, I think, got somewhere with a bit of motion of getting it finished was for a show. So we built it for Players Classic that's held at Goodwood last year. It's on the latest air suspension from Airlift and their management, so it airs up and down off your mobile phone, just off an app. My interest for cars began because my family have always been involved with the automotive industry. I've grown up on a proving ground and a farm, and obviously most farmers start driving some sort of machinery, whether it be a tractor or an old car or something around the field. When I turned 16, I hadn't been 16 for long, but I hadn't even really thought about racing, but my mum entered me into the Junior Ginetta scholarship that was held at the Proving Ground as it fell on my half term. And she knew, I think, that I'd have been a bit miffed if I hadn't been involved with it or had a chance at doing it. As I'd never done any racing at this point or anything. And it was judged on your media presentation, your driving ability and your fitness. And so I remember I knew the bleep test was one of the things, so while I was at school before half term I was doing the bleep test as much as I could and trying to actually learn the process of it, because obviously you've kind of got to learn the beeps a little bit. And yeah, that was the first kind of real go in a race car that I'd ever had. I got to the final, I'd never done any racing, so I couldn't have asked for any more at all. And that's kind of where it then looked at, I had a bit of a view to go, right, I'd like to race four wheels and go from there, really. Went out to organise a test day and yeah, went to have a go on a real circuit and that. So I went and did my race licence and got that, and yeah, the next thing was to get in a proper race car on a racetrack. So my first test day was at Snetterton on the new 300 circuit. They'd got no grass where they'd done all the alterations, so all the infield that they added in was just mud. So if you went off the track, you were in the mud, and it was torrential rain. So I went out in this Formula Ford that had an open diff. It was the liveliest thing I'd ever driven in my life. It only had a 4-speed dog box that was obviously on the right-hand side, like a single-seater's R, so it was a bit different to what I was used to. And yeah, everything was so fine-tuned, sort of, you touch the brake pedal and I'd worry about locking up and everything. So soon had to get used to that, but it was just aquaplaning weather, and you had to heel and toe on your downshift and give it the blip, or it'd try and lock the rear end up and you'd spin it into any corner. But I soon got to grips with it and it went well, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I liked the challenge and that, obviously, and yeah, overcoming that was really good, and the team were excellent and looked after me really well. So about 2 weeks after passing my driving test, which had been about a month after my 17th birthday, I started doing some events with one of my cousins and his friend who they ran a stunt team, and I ended up doing the live action shows with those guys. We got to about February time, and then the British Drift Championship launched that they were doing. They'd got a TV deal and they were having the rounds covered on TV. So those guys kind of pushed me to be like, do you want to do the British Drift Championship? It'd be good promotion for the stunt team and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, well up for it, and obviously I wasn't racing at this time, so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll definitely look into doing it. I went for my licence for the licence day for the British Drift Championship and did it in the completely standard E36 M3, so it didn't have the extra lock kit or anything like a lot of the drift cars do. and we came away with a drift license. So then it was time, we got like 3 or 4 weeks, and it was time to build a car. And the M3 was pretty tidy at the time, so I didn't want to put a roll cage in it, despite what everyone said, just put a roll cage in that car. And so we started with an unfamiliar shell that was an E30, and yeah, it was right, we need some power and we need to get some steering lock out of it and this, that and the other. So the M3 then became a donor for the engine at the time. So we took the 3-litre M3 engine out of it and put it in this E30, put a roll cage in the E30, and just kind of modified it to do this drifting that I wasn't really familiar with. Like, we did donuting and stunt stuff and all that, and you could hold a car sideways, but to actually do the rules of drifting, which are trying to get as much angle into the corners and to put on the show for the crowd and that, which I guess I'd done that with the stunt team, but yeah, it was a very different kind of thing that I was used to. So we had to get this car built in 4 weeks, and we finished it the night before the first round. So I went out in a car that I'd never ever driven. We got to the qualified in the top 16, which I didn't realise at the time was quite a big achievement. It was a good first round, and then the rest of the season got better as got to grips with the car and the new engine and different things like that. So at the end of the British Drift Championship year, I had a kind of decision on my plate of whether to pursue the racing and try and make a career of it, or whether I wanted to do the mechanicking and kind of get more involved with the mechanical side of things and pursue that. I decided to relocate to Woking so I could work with RR Racing, and that was about 2 hours away from home, and kind of get into the mechanical side of things and go from there. The original plan was for RR to help me run a old Formula Ford and the old Formula Ford Duratec Championship that year while I was working there, on like the odd weekends when I was free. But that never really came off because the championship wasn't as good as we'd kind of hoped. So I worked for them all year on the F3 cars, helped with the trucking. I did quite a lot of fabricating there, and I kind of learnt the TIG welding thing there more than anything. I've always welded, but to get the discipline from doing the other bits and it having to be a half decent standard, because obviously it's in an F3 paddock. And then towards the end of the year, because I hadn't raced all year, I got the itch to get in a car. So I ended up going in a Formula Ford in the main Formula Ford Championship, which was then had become a like EcoBoost turbo engine. I was quite confident, quite happy to go out at Silverstone for the first round in that car. We were a support race for the British touring cars and the Toka package, so it was a lot more in the limelight, obviously, and it was on ITV4 as well. But it was, yeah, all part of the challenge and good being thrown in at the deep end, which my whole racing career seems to have been. But yeah, I went to Silverstone, and I managed to put it on pole for all 3 races. So I carried on working for RR for the rest of that year, and up until December, and then I left there in December with the view to, I want to make a full attack at a full championship, so with the view to do the full season next year in Formula Ford supporting the touring cars. So when I got back from India racing in the last round of the MRF Championship, the Winter Series out there, I then had to focus my thoughts on getting this full attack mode ready for the full championship in the Formula Ford. Obviously this was the first race season I'd ever been in, so I didn't really know how to attack it. And with a lot of like chats with obviously the team and this, that and the other, and they said, look, we expect you, like before the season started sort of thing, we expect you to kind of learn for this first half of the year, and you haven't got the racecraft or anything like that because you've not done racing. So we expect you to kind of get used to the car, learn all that, start building a sort of structure and a bit of discipline and that, and then we'd expect you to kind of push on towards the end of the year, like middle of the year, we'd expect you to then be up the top. And then I think it was the round just before the kind of break in the middle of the season, which was Snetterton, I got my first win. So that was a great kind of to kind of push on for the rest of the year. But yeah, we had a mega year that year. I had 2 wins, I think 9 podiums, and then 3 fastest laps in my first year racing. So I was kind of over the moon with it, really. These are just some of the trophies that I've got in the workshop. These are from the scholarship class in 2011 when I did Formula 4 the last 2 rounds. That's a second place Formula 3 one. These 2 over here are from the Formula 4 Championship, in the full championship. And this one's probably one of the highlights of my career, which was when Ford let me drive their Ford GT up the hill at Cholmondeley Pageant of Power and won the bridge jumping award for jumping the bridge at the end of the hill climb. Mid-season of the Formula 4 Championship, Mom spoke to me and said, right, I've spoken to RR, obviously I knew them quite well because I'd worked with them, and she said, I've got you a birthday present. It falls on your birthday weekend and you race in an F3 car at Thruxton. I was like, great, like what they said, and they're happy for me to do it. Obviously I've not got much racing behind me still. I'd only done this half this season and a couple of odd rounds beforehand. And my first race didn't go quite as planned. The fact that I stalled it, couldn't knock my handbrake off and stalled it, and then my teammate ran into the back of me and ripped the rear corner off his car. But my car then restarted and I finished the race without a problem. My teammate was out. So yeah, that was a bit of a learning curve with the handbrake thing, and I decided not to use the handbrake for the rest of the weekend. But obviously I hadn't done any practice starts in this car, and they've got such a light flywheel that they try and stall on you very easily. But we had a mega weekend at Thruxton. I got Mobile 1 Master of the Weekend, and it was a great weekend all in all. After Thruxton was out of the way, I got a phone call from Boyo, the team boss of RR, asking me about the following weekend, which was at Brands GP. Once we'd had a good weekend and finished at Brands Hatch, then the next opportunity I got was in the newer car at Donington, which my local track, one of my favourites. As we got to the last round at Donington Park in the F3 car, I really felt at home in the car. I got 2 second places and a DNF because I got a puncture, but I felt better than ever. I'd really sort of kind of found my feet in the racing and was comfortable in the car and fitter than I'd probably ever been before, probably ever in my life, and was ready to kind of move forward with that and look at doing a full season in F3 maybe towards the next year. The season came to a close and we sat down in the office with Boyo from RR and tried to kind of discuss what was my best option for the following year, whether to try and have a full attack of F3 or whether to go and do something different. So we came to the decision and sorted out everything for Australian Formula 3. It seemed the best sort of option for the money and for like the sort of seat time you get and the good weather and everything. So later that night, after having our discussion with Boyo and that, I went out for some food with some friends, and then I called back into my workshop to get my laptop out my office. On the way home, it was quite a dark night. There's patches of fog here and there, and I came round a blind bend on the main road. It used to be the main road from Leicester to Northampton, and came into a patch of fog and hit something. I got out the car and I think my survival instinct set in because I was around this blind bend and I thought, oh, I've hit something. Someone else is going to come around and hit me. So I got out the car, I walked for approximately like 20 foot and got my phone out of my pocket, rang 999. Obviously, it was only a couple of miles from home, so I knew the area pretty well. And I lay down this lane out off the side of the road, so I was away from everyone, like if another car crashed or whatever. No one knew I was there, and I had this pain. I was walking and I thought I could feel like I got like a 20-stone bloke hanging around my waist, and I was like dragging him along, and I didn't really know what I'd done or anything, and yeah, next thing I lay down on the phone to the police or a person on the other end of the line, waiting for the ambulance and police to arrive. I got picked up in an ambulance, I went to hospital, and it later turned out that a person had been doing a 3-point turn around this blind bend on the main road. He was in a black car, he'd stalled it across the road, completely across the carriageway, no lights on, nothing. So no wonder I didn't see it, but it later turned out he hadn't got a licence or any insurance or anything like that, and did eventually get put inside for it. I had the x-rays, CT scan, etc., and it turned out I'd broken my L1 vertebra, which is about level with your ribs, but in your spine. So I didn't realise quite how severe it was at the time, but it turned out later that I'd lost 50% of it. It was a compression fracture, so it was smashed into several different bits, and I've got 50% of bone gone into my spinal canal. So then, yeah, there was a long, obviously, recovery process with that. I couldn't stand up for longer than like 15 minutes up to 30 minutes as it started to ease off. And I couldn't travel in a car sitting upright because I had to lay down because obviously compression going over the bumps. My E30 that I'd been trying to rebuild to help like with the promotion of my racing and stuff was meant to be at the Autosport show in January at the start of obviously the following year, and this was the end of November that I broke my back. So the state of the car was completely stripped. It had gone through most of its dry build. I'd done pretty much all of it, had most of the stuff made that needed to be made and drawn up, and had it all done, and it was all in boxes around the car, but I stripped it bare to put in the paint shop to have a be fully soda blasted and get as best finish as I possibly could out of that shell. Obviously at this time I couldn't get I couldn't walk and I wasn't in a fit state to do it, so one of our mechanics that had worked for the family for years, who's a good friend of mine, he ended up moving on to it and trying to get it finished for me for the Autosport show. It was meant to be on Bilstein, the suspension people stand that Autosport show. And obviously once I broke it back, I couldn't guarantee the car being finished or anything like that. So they obviously replaced it, and I still had this like promise that I'd given to people that had given me product for it and different partners, sponsorship, whatever, that had given me different products for the car. And obviously not wanting to let them down, I still wanted to get it to the show. So I spoke to Autosport Direct, and they found space for me to have it there over the weekend when they changed the engineering hall to a normal, like a public hall sort of thing with different vehicles in there and stuff. I think the whole building of that car kind of kept my head in it, because I was always on the phone to Darren trying to talk him through the processes that were all in my head of where stuff fitted, how stuff mounted, everything went together, and how I wanted stuff mounting and that. I think it gave me a lot to think about and kept my mindset kind of in a good place. But we managed to just about get it done. Bits were painted the day it was meant to be going to the event, and I decided that it's best off taking it with no doors, no bonnet, no boot. One of the wings was missing because it didn't line up quite as well as the other side. So rather than trying to spend time getting it to fit perfectly, we just took it as it was, which showcased all the intricate work in the car and all those sort of bits. And in some ways showed off a lot of the products on the car, like suspension and stuff that you never normally see because they were hidden behind different panels. And it was received fantastically, far beyond what I could have ever imagined. So this is my BMW E30 that I drifted in 2012. It's the same car, but undergone considerable amount of change. It's as it was when it was at Autosport on Bilstein stand, and it's got a BMW 4-litre V8 out of an early 5 Series. It's mated to a Quaife sequential gearbox. It's been twin turboed, so it's got all bespoke exhaust manifolds, full exhaust system, and it should be roughly around 600 horsepower when it's finished. We're just waiting for some plugs for the wiring loom, with a view to put a forged engine in at a later date and bigger turbos, and maybe wind it up to nearer 1,000 horsepower, just see what the next weakest link is. Once we got Autosport out of the way, I then had to I was still looking forward to what I wanted to do. The car was roughly built up, albeit I'd still got to strip it back down and put things back together perfectly. I kind of then decided, right, what do I want to do? Do I want to race, or do I want to have a business, or what really? So as a bit of a safety thing, I obviously put the racing to one side, and I don't think my back would be up to a big crash, and because of the compression obviously that will go through it. Looked at the fact that I enjoy the mechanicking and enjoy messing around with cars and building cars and the design and the problem solving that you have involved with building cars. So I spoke to different people, all these people that I know in the industry and I've known years and got really good relationships with, and decided that I wanted to kind of launch a bit of a tuning company, doing making the most of the workshop that I've got and doing software and different bolt-on products, whether it be like suspension, brakes, exhaust kits, anything like that, and all sort of performance enhancing. I also did quite a lot previously with different companies, helping them with their products and being a bit of a brand ambassador for them and helping develop stuff and this, that and the other. So it kind of made sense that I could give myself the job that I enjoy but still making a business from it. So we do BMW and all the VAG group, so Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, Skoda, and predominantly try and do the software side of things. It's less strenuous on my back, and we also do the mechanical side of things, obviously the brakes, the suspension, the exhaust, and different setup stuff using my racing knowledge and all that sort of stuff that I've learnt to do in my racing career and that. And yeah, it's going well. I don't think I would change anything. I've definitely learnt a lot from having not been involved with the racing as much. I've definitely met a lot more people since breaking my back, and from very different areas. And yeah, everything happens for a reason. I think a lot of people say that, but I think there's enough positive to outweigh the negative in it.